Hey everyone, you know that feeling when your brain just feels full? Like you're constantly juggling too many tabs in your mind, and everything just feels a bit chaotic? Well, I recently dove into this incredible book, The Organized Mind Thinking Straight in the Age of Information Overload by Daniel J. Levitin, and it's less of a typical self-help guide and more of an owner's manual for your brain, helping you stay sane. It's absolutely fascinating, combining neuroscience and cognitive psychology to explain why we feel so overwhelmed today and what we can actually do about it. Levitin's core argument is that our brains, incredible as they are, weren't exactly designed for the sheer tsunami of information we face in the 21st century. Think about it, our ancestors lived in much simpler social groups, encountering the same people and information their whole lives. Today, Levitin points out, we're processing the equivalent of 175 newspapers a day in our leisure time, not to mention dealing with millions of products and endless digital files. It's no wonder we feel overwhelmed. So, the book's big message is we need to stop fighting against our brain's natural inclinations and instead learn to offload some of that mental work to external systems and train our minds to think more effectively. Levitin calls this the age of too much information. It's not just that there's a lot to process, it's that every piece of information often demands a decision. He explains that neuroscientists have found this decision overload leads to neural fatigue, making us less productive and affecting our judgment. Even for important choices, our brains simply don't prioritize decisions by importance, they just get tired after a certain number. This isn't even a new problem. The author reminds us that similar fears about information overload were raised when writing first appeared, with some contemporaries worrying it would weaken men's characters and create forgetfulness in their souls. Sound familiar? And here's the kicker, our own memories are surprisingly unreliable. We might remember things incorrectly, but still be stubbornly confident we're right. Levitin gives a great example of this fallibility with the wordless test, where most people confidently remember seeing the word sleep even though it wasn't on the list at all. This unreliability means we can't truly trust our brains to perfectly store every detail, which is precisely why ancient humans started writing things down in the first place, effectively extending their memory capacity beyond its natural limits. So, if our brains aren't naturally organized like a perfect filing cabinet, what are they like? Levitin describes it as a big old house with piecemeal renovations. It's a collection of specialized systems that evolve for different survival problems, sometimes working together, sometimes in conflict. The key, he says, is to understand how our brain does organize information so we can work with it, not against it. He simplifies our attentional system into four main components. You've got your central executive mode, which is your focused on-task attention. Like when you're deep into a complex project. Then there's the mind-wandering mode. That's when your brain starts to drift, thinking about dinner or your to-do list. This mode is actually really important for creativity and problem solving, as many insights happen when we step away from direct focus. We also have an attentional filter, which helps us ignore distractions like the hum from your computer or the traffic outside so you can concentrate. And finally, there's the attentional switch that lets us shift between these modes. The tricky part is, our brains have a novelty bias. They're easily hijacked by anything new and shiny, which is when multitasking feels so hard and unproductive. Levitin highlights that we humans are hardwired to categorize. It's how our brains simplify the overwhelming world. Reducing mental effort. Think about your junk drawer. The author says it's a perfect example of a fuzzy category, a useful escape valve for things that don't fit neatly elsewhere. The brain naturally groups things based on appearance or concept, helping us make sense of complexity. The book even talks about how specific regions in our brain light up when we form categories, showing their deep biological basis. So, how do we use this knowledge in our daily lives? The central idea is to offload information from our brains to the environment. It's like having a brain extension device. Instead of trying to remember everything, we write it down, creating external bins for our thoughts. Think of the simple yet powerful 3x5 index card system Levitin discusses. One idea per card, allowing for random access and easy resorting as your priorities change. This isn't just busy work, it frees up your brain from clutter, allowing for better decision making and creativity. The author points out that famous innovators like Paul Simon and Mark Twain carried notebooks for their ideas, demonstrating this principle. The same principle applies to our homes. Levitin suggests creating designated places for things you need regularly and hiding things you don't. He uses the example of a well-organized, more frequently used liquors are in a speed rack for easy access, while less common ones are tucked away. It's about reducing visual clutter and minimizing mental energy spent searching. He even floats the idea of having separate computers or devices for different domains, one for work, one for personal finances, one for leisure, to help your brain associate information with specific contexts, leveraging its natural place memory. Levitin devotes a significant portion of the book to decision-making, especially when the stakes are high, like in medical situations. He explains how our brains are prone to systematic errors or cognitive biases. For instance, we tend to favor vivid, anecdotal stories over dry statistics, even when the statistics are far more reliable. This is the representativeness heuristic. If something looks like what we expect, we often ignore the bigger picture, the base rates, but here's how to fight back. Levitin introduces a simple tool called a fourfold table, also known as a contingency table. This isn't just for statisticians, it's an incredibly useful way to visually organize information, especially when dealing with probabilities, like understanding the true risk of a disease given a positive test result. He walks through a hypothetical scenario where a rare disease test comes back positive. Our intuition might tell us it's serious, but when you lay out the base rates and error rates in a fourfold table, you often find the probability of actually having the disease is much lower than you'd think. This tool helps us overcome our tendency to neglect denominators and focus only on the dramatic numerator. He emphasizes that doctors, while invaluable, aren't always trained in statistical reasoning or openly discuss all potential side effects, often focusing more on efficacy than risk. So, a crucial takeaway is to be your own advocate. Use these tables, ask probing questions, and understand your own willingness to take risks. Now, we all think we're great at multitasking, don't we? But Levitin busts that myth, saying our brains are more like a bad amateur plate spinner. Multitasking actually takes more energy than focusing on one task because of the metabolic costs of constantly shifting attention. It depletes your brain's neurochemicals and harms deep thinking and creativity. He points out that the awareness of an unready mail, for instance, can effectively reduce your id by 10 points. Instead, he champions the flow state, that blissful absorption where you lose track of time and self. This is where true creative breakthroughs happen, often involving a seesaw between focused effort and mind-wandering. Creative people often resist overly compartmentalized systems because creativity thrives in the daydreaming mode, which is in a seesaw relationship with the highly structured central executive mode. So, to be truly productive and creative, you need to deliberately schedule time for deep focus, breaks, and even naps, which Levitin notes are scientifically proven to enhance memory and cognitive function. And for all you procrastinators out there, myself included, Levitin offers insights. He mentions Jake Edwards, a film producer who combated his procrastination by adopting the Eat the Frog principle. Do the most unpleasant task first thing in the morning when your willpower is highest. Procrastination often isn't laziness, it can stem from initiation deficits, poor planning, or even insidious perfectionism. He reassures us that successful people have had many failures. The key is how they respond to setbacks, viewing them as learning opportunities rather than career enders. In our modern world, where do we get our information? Levitin talks about the double-edged sword of crowdsourcing, especially platforms like Wikipedia. While amazing for accessibility and community storytelling, he points out a crucial flaw: the lack of respect for expertise. On Wikipedia, an 11-year-old's contribution can be given the same weight as an aeronautical engineer's, and articles can be hacked into inaccuracy by hordes of non-experts. This means we, the users, have to do the shadow work of authenticating, validating, and evaluating information ourselves. This leads to one of his most important lessons: we must teach ourselves and our children critical thinking skills. This isn't just about facts, it's about evaluating sources, identifying biases, and understanding plausibility. It challenges us to apply Fermi problems, making educated guesses to solve seemingly impossible questions like how much does the Empire State Building weigh? It's about developing algorithms for figuring things out, not just knowing the answer, because ultimately, information is anything that reduces uncertainty, and knowing how to find and verify that information is paramount. So why does all this matter now? Because in this age of constant information flow and endless choices, Leviton's organized mind isn't just about tidings, it's about reclaiming our mental clarity and improving our lives. It's about understanding how our brains actually work and creating systems that support, rather than overwhelm our natural cognitive processes. My biggest takeaway from this book is twofold. First, externalize everything you can. Write it down, use digital tools, create designated places, free your precious mental RAM. Second, cultivate critical thinking and embrace focused attention. Resist the urge to multitask, allow for mind wandering, and always question the information you consume. This book really makes you think about things you think you know, and then think harder about them. It offers practical, scientifically backed ways to live more smoothly, efficiently, and even happily. It's an owner's manual for your mind, helping us stay sane amidst the daily fire hose of information. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, disorganized, or just plain tired from too much thinking, this book is truly an antidote. It encourages us to be more conscientious and intentional with our attention, making us better decision makers, more creative thinkers, and ultimately leading more satisfying lives. Definitely worth a read.